What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you on Thursday, October 10th, 2024. We are now just 2 days away from number 3 Oregon against number 2 Ohio State in Eugene in Autzen Stadium. The anticipation continues to build for what could be the biggest game in Autzen Stadium history. And joining me to break down this matchup and talk some recruiting ahead of this weekend's game is ScoopDuck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. J-Hop, how we doing?
We are good. It feels like we are just crawling along, waiting for this big game. And it's, it feels like we've talked about it in every single angle, but people are still excited and eating it up. So I guess we'll just keep talking about it.
It's that big of a game. And what do you do with big games, Justin? You have flash sales like what we have going on right now over at ScoopDuck.com. You guys can get 50% off a ScoopDuck membership today, right now, by using the promo code GODUCKS. You see that right there on your screen here if you're watching us here on the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. Justin said it last episode, we love doing the podcast, but what pays our bills is those subscriptions over at ScoopDuck. And you don't just get access to us, you get access to the rest of the On3 network, which really comes in handy when Oregon has big games like this one against Ohio State. You can head on over to Letterman Row, our Ohio State site, and read all of their stuff. Michigan later on down the line comes to mind as well. So make sure you guys check that out. Use promo code GODUCKS for 50% off a ScoopDuck membership. So, Justin, we're going to talk a little bit about the game, but definitely take a little bit more of a heavy recruiting focus in today's episode. And one thought that came to mind for me, I was listening to Terrence Ferguson's presser earlier today, and I think what he had to say can kind of apply to a lot of guys on this year's Oregon team. And he was basically saying that this is the kind of game that you come back to Oregon for, that you play another season of college football for, because he is one of only a handful of guys. I mean, I'm trying to think him, maybe Marcus Harper and Dante Manning as the remaining guys that were on that Oregon team in 2021 that went into Columbus and came away with a win over the Buckeyes. So this is the one you come back for. I think Dylan Gabriel said something along the lines of, this is what dreams are made of, which was hilarious to me because I was thinking about the song. But what do you think about that when you hear it?
Yeah, I mean, they're right. I mean, this is what college football is built on, right? I mean, obviously it's a week in and week out, but it's these games, obviously everybody's a fan of a certain school and they're going to pay close attention to that school. But this is a game like Georgia-Bama a few weeks ago that draws the attention of the nation and says, hey, look, I'm going to watch my team play, but I'm going to check that game out too. And that's just like, that's a great thing. That's why Oregon getting into the Big Ten was so important. For its longevity, for its future, is because it's now going to have matchups, maybe not totally like number 2 and number 3, but the potential for having top 10 matchups year in and year out is there because Michigan's good and Penn State's good and USC, they could be good. Washington, was good with DeBoer there. So, I mean, you've got so many schools to pick from and so many schools that have an ability to be a top 10 school. And that's why you're here. They're right. I mean, this is why Jordan Burch came back. I mean, this is why, Jabbar Muhammad transfers to Oregon. We all have eyes on Jabbar Muhammad and what he's going to do against Jeremiah Smith or Egbuka or whoever he's matched up on. And Jordan Burch, same thing. You're looking at a guy that was probably a mid-round guy maybe there. In a game like this and the way he's been playing, all of a sudden he's up in that first round somewhere. Again, that's conjecture, but it's totally possible. And I listened to Josh Pate when he talked about this game, and he was right. This is a game for Dylan Gabriel, right? This is almost like a career-defining game. Like, he's had some big games and won some big games. Obviously, played a lot of college football, but this is one that he's going to be remembered for, especially coming off the game against Michigan State and those very unfortunate interceptions. He played all right, didn't play terribly, didn't play well. He just played all right, and those interceptions were big. So, I mean, that's what it's about. Like you said, it's about these guys coming back, and it's about games like this and having this opportunity. That's why you go to Oregon, is to have opportunities to play in these kinds of games.
Speaking of quarterback, Justin, I'm glad that you mentioned Dylan Gabriel because obviously he's kind of trying to right the ship a little bit after some kind of gross turnovers the past 2 games, right? Well, if we just look at it as far as what he needs to do, I think back to that 2021 game against Ohio State that Oregon played in when Anthony Brown was the quarterback. I mean, I don't want to rag on the guy, but Anthony Brown wasn't a great quarterback, in my opinion. He did just enough to get by in that game. And honestly, I think that's really what Dylan Gabriel has to do, because that's where this Oregon roster has gotten to. He doesn't need to be a superhero. He doesn't need to play hero ball. First and foremost, take care of the ball. That is what you need to do if you're Dylan Gabriel. Distribute the ball to your playmakers. Just get the ball to them and let them go to work. I think also managing protections is really big for this offensive line that continues to gel. And I think you're feeling a lot better about this offensive line than you were, say, 3-4 weeks ago, Justin. So that's definitely a major plus. And then the other thing I think Dylan Gabriel needs to do in this game against Ohio State, you got to push the ball down the field a bit. Maybe not all the time, but you got to hit those deep shots when the game calls for it, because I think that's going to go a long way in keeping that defense on their toes and ultimately making this a successful offensive day on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question the number one job of Dylan Gabriel is protect the football. He can't fumble it. He can't throw an interception. All of those, become exposed in a game of this magnitude. And I think for Oregon, your bread and butter. See, I know we've been kind of picking on Oregon doing a lot of dinking and dunking, or, just kind of short passing game, but I think that sets them up for success here, right? I mean, Ohio State, I think the strength of their team, they're good at running back, they're good at receiver, they're great in the secondary. Their secondary is I'd say it's elite. I mean, it's one of the best in the country. And, to me, I think that Oregon does need to push the ball deep and they need to take some chances, but their bread and butter is going to be that short to intermediate game, right? They're going to need to be able to run the ball, need to be able to get those quick outs to Tez or Trayshawn or whatever, get 3, 4, 5 yards. Just if they can stay ahead of the chains in this game, they'll be okay for success, and you can take a shot or two. But, the minute they get down 2nd and 15 or they're, it's looking at a 3rd and 12, that's going to be the drive killers right there. Those are going to be really hard for Oregon to overcome against Ohio State. So, to me, I'm totally okay with a dink and dunk approach. I think if Dylan Gabriel can execute that, it sets Oregon up for success. Secondly, okay, and we know this is a thing, if Oregon can get some of these drives and have sustained drives, guess what that does? That keeps Ohio State from having the football on their offense, right? So you can keep the game in check. So I guess the number one thing, I don't mind if Oregon goes into the half down or trailing or whatever the case might be. It just can't be by a lot, because if they're forced to throw it deep to try to make up, 14, 21 points, whatever the case might be, that's going to be problematic.
A couple other notes for me, especially on this Oregon offense heading into Saturday, Justin. Jordan James had a heck of a game last week against Michigan State, but I don't think you want to have to lean on him a whole lot if you're Will Stein on Saturday. I think it's clear that he's going to be someone that you run the offense through, but this could be a game where he kind of gets a little bit worn down. I'm not saying he isn't durable or anything like that, but this is the biggest game that they've had all season. So I'm going to be fascinated to see what kind of a game the Ducks get from Noah Whittington, because I think on the one hand, you can see, okay, James is clearly the best back on this team, but we haven't seen Whittington getting utilized a whole lot. So that gap between James and the rest of the running backs, I think, could come into play on Saturday. Running back talent has always been an embarrassment of riches at Oregon, and we've seen Jalen Lamar continue to get snaps. We haven't really seen any of Jay Harris this year as he kind of gets up to speed, transferring over from Northwest Missouri State. But that's another thing I'm going to kind of keep an eye on. Is this the game where Noah Whittington can really show up and make a major impact? Because to be totally honest, and I'm not being critical, but he's been a little quiet since that Boise State game.
Yeah, he's been inefficient. He just hasn't run the ball very well. And that's just calling a spade a spade. I think if Noah Whittington was speaking candidly, he'd probably say the same thing about his performance. And it doesn't mean he doesn't know how to run the ball. We know it's there, but coming off from that injury, he just hasn't been the same guy so far. So I could see Oregon riding James. My concern is that, late in the game, getting tired, getting beat up. He's, had 25 carries, whatever the case might be. That's a lot. This is a very good physical defense, a very good front. And so, to me, yes, it would be great if Noah Whittington could run the ball or even be a pass catching option out of the backfield. I think more importantly, this is a game where Dylan Gabriel has to run the ball. He has to run the ball. He's going to have to keep some. He doesn't have to run them for 70-yarders. That's not it. He just needs to be able to get 6-8 yards, maybe 10 yards, slide, get down, reset, first down, off you go. So I think that's the element I'm looking for, is that we've seen it in like just little bits with Dylan Gabriel, and we know he's got it. We know he can do it. I think this is a game where maybe you take a little bit bigger chance and run him a little bit more than you have so far.
And when we have seen Dylan Gabriel run the ball, I feel like he's been pretty efficient, and he's also been smart with the ball. He's not taking a lot of unnecessary hits. So I think those are two things that you really want to see from your quarterback if you are Will Stein. Last offensive note that I have, Justin, I think we've talked about it a little bit throughout the season. Again, I don't think this is necessarily super critical, but it's something I've noticed. It does seem like Gabriel likes to lock onto Tez Johnson. I feel like I wrote that earlier on this season, and people on our message boards were saying, well, why is that a bad thing? If he's open, then throw it to him. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I think that you face a team like Ohio State, they're going to do everything they can to take that away. So, hey, that's why you go give some throws to Evan Stewart or Terrence Ferguson, who had a really big game last week on that huge screenplay that almost was a touchdown. I want to see Dylan Gabriel distribute the ball, because I think that's going to make this Oregon offense all the more dangerous. Terrence Ferguson and Evan Stewart have to be at the top of that list. Trayshawn Holden as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt if you're Ohio State or anybody moving forward, you're going to focus on Tez. And so, I could totally understand that. And I do get why Gabriel locks on. And the dude's open. He does a really good job of finding the soft spots and getting open and great separation, and obviously rarely drops the football. But yeah, I mean, this is a game where, that's probably going to be something that Ohio State focuses on defensively. So I totally agree. This is a great chance for Gabriel to really kind of maybe put that noise to bed a little bit and be like, hey, I do know how to look around here. There just hasn't been much reason for me to lately. So this is a game there's probably going to be more reason. And again, this all encompasses why you come back to Oregon, right? It's to have these kind of games. It's to show, there's going to be a gazillion scouts either in Eugene or watching this at the very least. And this is why you show, hey, look, I'm a guy. I can do this. I could be in the NFL. Whatever you think my weaknesses are, let me prove that I don't have them. And gosh, yeah, the offense, again, just can't turn the ball over. That's what you can't do.
All right. Well, I know we wanted to get to some recruiting, Justin. Should we hop into that right now, or do you have any final thoughts on the game?
No final thoughts. Get to game day. Go enjoy that. Wear black. Make sure you guys are wearing black. I feel like Oregon hasn't promoted that enough, and I think a blackout would be pretty cool. So I guess make sure you're spreading the word. Tell a buddy. Tell your wife. Tell whatever. Hey, make sure you got a black shirt on at the very least, or sweatshirt, or whatever the case might be, and hydrate people, because it's coming.
There you go. Well, let's switch gears here, Justin, as we get you ready for Oregon versus Ohio State this weekend in Autzen Stadium, 4:30 p.m. kickoff on NBC, and ESPN's College Game Day will be hosted on the University of Oregon campus Saturday morning. Justin, we talked about a couple visitors on our last episode, but let's go ahead and talk about a couple of more big 2025 visitors, because this is as impressive of a recruiting visitor list as we've seen since last year against USC, I would say. Let's start off talking about 2025 Baylor linebacker commit Caleb Burns out of Houston, Texas, Cy Falls High School. He's going to be coming to Oregon this weekend, was offered by the Ducks last month, so definitely a late offer, but he's getting on campus. This is going to be an official visit for him. And right now, it does kind of have the feeling that he's not staying with Baylor. He's either going to go to Oregon or he's going to go to Oklahoma. No Oklahoma official visit has been set just yet, though, as of my last interview with him. But Oregon needs linebackers in this class. They don't have any yet. And gosh, Burns is a guy that they think checks every box.
Yeah. I mean, when you flip on the film and you watch him, it's understandable for two things. It's understandable that he's risen so much in the rankings here in the fall, because he's been a steady riser basically since summer. And that's obviously going off of what, the scout evaluator guys at 24/7 or On3 or wherever you're talking about see. And of course, he's matching that with offers. So clearly, college coaches are seeing that too. Secondly, as it pertains directly to Oregon, super athletic. You can see the guy run around, fly all over the field. And we know by now that that's something that Dan Lanning likes in his defense. So I know you've been fortunate enough to talk to him a couple times already since the offer. Obviously, you were able to talk to him before this visit. Feel good about us getting an interview when he's done with the visit. And one thing I like about that, it speaks to me whenever a kid kind of becomes easy to get on the phone, knowing that you kind of write for a certain school, that always speaks volumes in my mind, right? I mean, like if somebody from Arizona that covers Arizona kept trying to call him and get him on the phone, he's probably not going to be very responsive, right? But I think that speaks to his interest level in Oregon, the fact that he's been so openly communicating with you.
Yeah, he's been a great interview for sure, and I think that's a cool little tidbit that maybe a lot of readers don't take into account too much. So Oregon does have a little bit of an edge here because they did offer earlier than Oklahoma, but that said, I don't think that you can count Oklahoma out of this race by any means. I know that he does have an on-3 RPM prediction to Oklahoma from Sooner Scoop, but I don't know, Justin. I'm feeling pretty good about Oregon's chances right now. I haven't logged a prediction just yet. I think I want to see what happens coming out of that OV and if he ends up scheduling an Oklahoma OV, because really how I look at this, just based on how quickly it came together and how strongly he's spoken about the Ducks, even if he sets up an Oklahoma visit, I don't know, but it could be too little too late. I think this is a guy that Oregon wants to get on campus this weekend and wrap it up. They don't want him to get to Norman if they can prevent it. So this is the kind of game that I think can really put you over the top and maybe be one that helps you win this recruitment in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the stars kind of have aligned here. Baylor's obviously underperforming this year. Oregon was able to get an early offer in. Obviously, was able to move quickly to set up this visit, which to me, I think this is going to, if Oregon doesn't already lead, I have a really difficult time believing they don't lead coming out of this visit. And, then it kind of becomes hey, am I good enough with Oregon that I don't need to visit Oklahoma? Or do I want to take that visit anyways, just to make sure? And I wouldn't fault him for taking it. I totally understand it. I'd take your visits, check them out. But I could see a situation where, he gets to Eugene this weekend in this game, in this atmosphere, win or lose. And that could be that. So this is one that I have my eye on for sure.
The last thing that I think is worth adding here when we're talking about Caleb Burns, and if you read ScoopDuck, you already know because I wrote it in my interview. When I asked him about his official visit to Oklahoma, he said that he was trying to set one up. It looked like he was going to be making it out there next weekend for his official visit with the Sooners, but he said that he has homecoming either that day or that weekend. So potentially a little bit of a schedule conflict there. That's something that only comes around, I guess, once or twice, right? If you're in high school. So that could be something that could be a little bit of a hurdle. And I don't know if I that's part of the reason that I think, Justin, that just the way that the scheduling works out, it definitely seems like it's favoring Oregon because they're going to get him on campus. He's never been to Oklahoma, which I thought was a little bit of a shock given the proximity with him being in Houston, not even for a camp when I asked him. So but this is one that I think is one of the very most important visitors for the Ducks in the 2025 class this weekend.
Yep, big visitor, and just I'm sure the Ducks will put the full court press on here. And once again, I think Oregon's going to be in the driver's seat coming out of this trip.
All right, so let's see who we want to talk about next. How about we just stay on linebacker, Justin, and we can talk about another one in the 2025 class. Probably know who I'm talking about. That's McKay Madson out of North Clovis High School, which I believe is in the Central Valley, kind of between Northern and Southern California, kind of smack dab in the middle a little bit, out near Fresno-ish. McKay Madson is an absolute stud. He's working from a top three of Oregon, UCLA, and BYU. He is of LDS faith, so that is one reason I think you have to absolutely have BYU as a major contender here. Probably number two, I would think, in terms of Oregon's biggest competition here. I'm not putting too much weight into UCLA at the moment, but those are the three schools he's focused on. And one of the reasons you need to know McKay Madson is because he's kind of a freak athlete. His first clip right out of the gate is a massive touchdown run. He plays running back. He plays linebacker. Just a guy who does absolutely everything. And I really like Oregon's position here coming into this visit. It will not be an official visit based on the latest that I've been hearing. I think the plan is for him to come out for an OV later on in the season, maybe December before the early signing period. So I think that the timing favors Oregon here as far as just the rest of this calendar year goes. and getting him on campus this weekend is a great step.
Yeah, it looks like Bryce Betcher out there, just a guy that can move and run and just a superb athlete, because I don't think people give enough credit to Betcher for how good of an athlete he truly is. And so, yeah, I think normally in most cases you would look at and say, yeah, Oregon, BYU, UCLA, Oregon should be the heavy favorite. I think maybe Oregon is a slight favorite, but BYU is having a hell of a football year. You have to consider them a real threat given his background and faith, and obviously BYU being a big part of that, or included in that, I should say. So I think that's the battle there. The one thing that I guess I don't get super hung up on is obviously he's going to take his mission, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, year and a half, whatever the case might be. So this is a guy that, yeah, you're basically signing and stashing. That's the way you look at it if you're able to get him committed to you. Really like him, great looking backer. I could see why Oregon would like him, but I guess a lot like Gatlin Bear, where you sign and stash him, and then if they show up or when they show up, you kind of think, oh, cool, we got this guy. What do we do with him?
Certainly one McKay Madson is that I think Oregon has a great shot of ultimately landing when the time comes. And the other note that I think is just interesting to talk about here, Justin, you've covered Oregon a long time, longer than I have. I can admit that, obviously. But it's a reality that Oregon hasn't really shown a whole lot of interest in some of these players that go on mission trips until recent years. I think Gatlin Bear is obviously the prime example, if you will, that crown jewel 5-star receiver from the 2025 class out of Idaho. And then now we have a guy like McKay Madson. Well, what do you kind of make of that? Because it seems like an interesting strategy point, if you will. Not to say that they didn't want players that went on mission trips, but that is a difference that I'm seeing over the years.
Yeah, I think I don't know that it's Oregon per se, because it's been several coaches, right? It's been, from Mark Helfrich, Taggart for a year, but then, obviously Mario Cristobal, and then, now Dan Lanning. And like you said, we haven't seen a lot. I think more than anything, I think fewer of these kids are taking their missions. And I have no facts. This is not my faith, and I don't do research in it. And I'm not discouraging that from happening, but I think by and large, you're seeing that be less of a thing year in and year out with recruiting. There's always a few kids, a few kids every year. But I mean, I remember a time when it used to be 10, a dozen D1 level kids that were a lot of times out of Hawaii or out of Utah, which are, huge populations of folks in the LDS community. And, Oregon's not recruiting Hawaii the way they used to overall. They've still, continued to recruit Utah. I just think we're seeing it less and less than we used to.
Okay. Yeah. Just an interesting little element or factor to kind of just digest here as we break down more of the big time visitors that are heading to Eugene this weekend for number 3 Oregon versus Ohio State. Justin, who doesn't like 5 stars? I think we got to talk some 5 stars. Would feel like we're doing our listeners and our subscribers an injustice if we don't talk about this 5-star visitor. So let's talk about him, because he's definitely a big name coming to campus, and that is 2025 5-star Birmingham, Alabama, Parker High School cornerback Naeem Offord, who is verbally committed to Ohio State, took his official visit to Oregon over the summer. And there's 3 schools that are really kind of in the mix here in this recruitment. Obviously, you have Ohio State, where he's verbally committed, but 2 other schools have really made a push here, and that's Oregon and Auburn. So this is a big visit for Naeem Offord, and it was one that seemed like it might have been a little bit up in the air, right? It sounded like he was going to be in town, and then there was a little bit of fluidity, but our Steve Wiltfong was able to confirm that one, and he is going to be in town. So with Oregon having 2 commitments already, and Brandon Finney and Dorian Brew, who are also scheduled to be in Eugene this weekend, what do you make of Offord coming out to Eugene?
Yeah, it's just, I know we've talked about it a couple times a little bit, but obviously a unique situation. He's committed to Ohio State. And I believe I said this last time, there's no way on earth you're bringing an Ohio State commit out when Ohio State's in town if you think he's going to recruit against you, right? So if you felt like, hey, Naeem Offord, if we brought him out, he's just going to recruit our guys to go with him to Ohio State, you're not bringing him out. So I think that says a lot right there. That's kind of an action thing more than a words thing. So, in terms of that, I think you look at that and say, okay, that means this guy's legitimately on the market, and maybe he's still committed to Ohio State. But I know I've said for a while now, I don't believe he signs with the Buckeyes. So I think it's Oregon and Auburn. I think Auburn had some momentum there, maybe as recent as a few weeks ago. But I think with how things are currently going down at Auburn this season, they've maybe lost a little bit of steam there. And I've always felt like this is a guy Oregon's been kind of laying in the weeds on. So I just think that if you just line it up and look at, hey, okay, here's an Ohio State commit that has not visited Ohio State yet this season and is taking a visit out to Oregon when they play Ohio State. That kind of says something to me.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I don't think I knew that little note about him not getting out to Columbus. It's another guy that is going to have a spot as long as he wants it or wants to entertain that possibility. I think Oregon's fine with only taking 2 cornerbacks. They really like Dorian Brew. They really like Brandon Finney. But if you're Dan Lanning, you're swinging for the fences. Like, you're going to try to recruit as many 5-star, high-caliber guys as you possibly can, as many of them as are going to listen to you. Like, you had DJ Pickett, who they were really in the mix for, got down to Final 3, and he ended up committing to LSU. When both you and I felt good about him ending up at Oregon, but they didn't stop recruiting Naeem Offord amid all of that. So I think that this just goes to show you that you have to stay in the mix as long as you possibly can. I don't think you or myself are expecting a commitment from Offord or any kind of a big flip, but this is a step in the right direction. And maybe this visit goes really well and you can bring him back out for another visit later on in the season. I think that that's something that could still be on the table depending on how this weekend goes. So Naeem Offord, definitely one of the most important visitors for Oregon in the 25 class.
Yeah, it might even be the most important visitor because, you start to think about it, and the Ducks are going to lose some cornerbacks off of this team, this roster right now, that are all playing heavy minutes. So you could see the need for them to go and get some elite guys to get out there, ready to, at worst, contribute next season.
No doubt about it. Well, I feel like we've hit on a lot of really good 25 recruits, Justin, between today's pod and the most recent podcast. How about we kind of wrap it up a little bit with some 2026s, because there's still some really good talent in the 2026 class that is expected in Eugene for this game. Where do you want to go with that, the 2026s? Maybe I can pull up their film.
Yeah, no, I would say this. Go ahead and find one that you want to pull up. I'd probably start with Kendra Harris. At least if we didn't mention it, because not everybody might know there's multiple 5-stars coming and they are committed. Dorian Brew's coming, DeCorian Moore's coming, Akili Smith's coming, Jordan Davison's coming. I know I'm missing more, but I mean, Douglas U2's coming, a very good contingent. Yeah, Alani, his teammate, a very good contingent of the 2025 Oregon commits are coming. And there's nothing you love more than that, because I think those guys coming, obviously they're going to have a great time. Brandon Finney's coming, getting him to stay committed because he's, visited Penn State and whatnot. Having those guys around these uncommitted guys is absolutely massive. They become recruiters for you through the game, through everything. So I feel like we should mention, because that's, 4 more 5-stars that are coming that are, currently committed to Oregon.
Yeah, a lot of big time names coming to town, and those guys are your best recruiters in a lot of cases. Another one of the really important 2026 guys, the one that you mentioned, Justin, is Reidsville, North Carolina tight end Kendra Harrison, the number 1 tight end in the country according to our rankings over at On3. He's been to Oregon before. I believe he was on campus earlier in the summer around that Saturday Night Live timeline. This is just an absolute can't miss stud, freak athlete, 6'6", 6'7", 250 pounds, wants to play basketball and football at the next level. He has the opportunity to do those 2 sports at Oregon, as the Ducks offered him, Dana Altman and the Ducks, I should say, offered him during the summer. And just given that tight ends are at such a premium at any program, some programs are really good at stacking a lot of them. Sometimes you kind of hit and miss. This is a guy you want to push all your chips in for, Justin, and he doesn't seem like he's close to a decision at all right now. I did post an interview with full quotes from him over on ScoopDuck, so you guys should definitely go give that one a read. It's a premium story, so subscribe and you can read it. But gosh, the names literally don't get any bigger than Kendra Harrison at tight end, Justin.
No, and it's paramount, because obviously we know Oregon is looking for tight ends in this current cycle at 2025, and there's a few names out there, but if they're looking in this class, there's no reason not to be looking ahead as well. And Harrison's one of the very best, is the very best, at least at that position. So, love seeing Dan Lanning, go for the moon and go for the stars. And again, I think if we go back, and it might be an interesting story, if we go back and look at the 2025 commits that Oregon currently has, it would be an interesting breakdown to see how many of those guys took a visit to Oregon during the fall of last year, so they were able to see a game, because I'd wager the percentage is pretty high. So just because Oregon won't get a commitment from him on Monday when he leaves Eugene doesn't mean that doesn't play huge down the road. When maybe he gets a little closer to a decision in March, April, May, June, whenever he makes a choice.
And that, I think, gets to a larger point just at the importance of this weekend, Justin. I asked him why he wanted to visit Oregon. Why now? Why this game? And he said, well, everybody wants to take a visit to Oregon. Why not visit when they play Ohio State? So that's another thing that I think really helps Oregon here. Regardless of the outcome, you're going to have an electric environment that these recruits are going to get to see firsthand. And especially in the 2026 class, you're laying the foundation here. Oregon already has the number one class in the country, at least the last time I checked the rankings that we have over at On3. You get a great visit out of a 2026 guy, it's not going to be hard down the road to sell them on coming back again and ultimately getting an official visit down the line when it comes crunch time for a lot of these touted and coveted recruits. So Kendra Harrison's a big one. Tomohini Tapui is another one, a guy that you and I both really like Oregon's chances for out of modern day. Jonas Williams is going to be coming back, Oregon's 2026 quarterback commit out of the state of Illinois. He's kind of the face of the class right now. So, pick not pick your poison, but my God, it's just a laundry list of absolute studs and big-time recruits coming to Eugene.
Yeah, I mean, 4-star Bot Mulitalu, 4-star linebacker, Talanoa Ely. I mean, you and I could sit here and ramble on this full list, which so you don't have to try and write them down or remember them, because I can barely remember them, and I write about them. Just go read about them and look up their profiles and look at who's offering them. And again, we talked about it, I think, on our most recent episode, but just really this game, this weekend, this atmosphere brings me back to Kayvon Thibodeau's recruitment and the impact that win over Washington had. Fans storming the field, all the thing, Kayvon, doing his video, whatever. Just that's what can happen for the 25s, and then the 26s that experience that. I mean, that's a memory game. They're going to be going, oh yeah, they'll be talking in January, be like, oh man, I remember coming out for that Ohio State game. That was sick, and just that's what's at stake here. So, of course, Oregon could lose. Of course, Oregon could win. It could be a dramatic win. It could be a blowout, either direction. We don't know the outcome of the game. It's still worth the risk if you're Oregon to get them out here and show them what it's going to be like with game day and just the atmosphere and the environment. I'll hit my picture.
Yeah, and I was in Spokane at Gonzaga when the Ducks kind of retook the lead, I guess you could say, or control in that Huskies rivalry, and now I'm going to be there at this Ohio State game. So just all the possibilities for this weekend definitely have me excited to get back out to Eugene and bring you guys some awesome coverage over there at ScoopDuck. But we've hit about 30 minutes, Justin. I got to make sure I give a quick shout out to Ranchito Grill. Can't forget that. Can't go an episode without that. Make sure you guys get on over to Ranchito Grill at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. What do you have to try? Yeah, that's right. They're homemade tortillas. I say that every time. You got to try them out. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. And in other Ranchito news, you guys should stop by on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, because it looks like Justin and I are going to do a little meet and greet and try to say what's up to you guys, shake some hands, say some hellos, talk some Ducks with you guys ahead of this massive weekend in Eugene. So it should be a fun time. Always have a great time when I get out to Ranchito, Justin, and it's going to be a fun weekend for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Ruben. I'm certain he'll be working because he's always working and they'll be busy. I'm excited that if anybody watching this gets to come and meet with us, even if you just have a beer and some chips and take off, that's enough. Just kind of get to see you and, say go Ducks or whatever it might be. So yeah, come on out. I believe it'll be out on the patio more than likely. I know there have been player parents that have shown up to these in the past. I don't want to promise it. But there's a high probability you'll probably see a parent or two Friday night as well at Ranchito with us. So come on down, get some tortillas.
There you go. There you go. Well, yeah, it's another awesome episode of the pod, Justin. Appreciate you guys tuning in. It's going to be a huge, huge weekend in Eugene, Oregon, Ohio State game day. It's all going down in Eugene this weekend. So that's why you got to be locked in with us on ScoopDuck. Last chance to get that deal. I got to promo it. You can get 50% off a ScoopDuck subscription right now, right this second, Justin, by using promo code GODUCKS. And you can get access to all of our other On3 team sites as well. You get me, you get Justin, Chad Simmons, Steve Wiltfong, absolute all-star lineup of heavy hitters. So that's why we are the place to be at ScoopDuck. But make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Share the show, share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. You can find Justin at jhopkinssd on Twitter/X. You can find me anywhere at mtorresports. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.